I'm back. Road Rants on my continuing video podcast series on Friday the 13th. As we know, this started on my original channel. That's right. A lot of you probably clicked on this from the community post on Road Rants. Well, this is Road Rants on pop culture. And one of the things I love about these video podcasts is we can talk about the channel, we can talk about our subject, and we can also talk about the channel a little bit. I am currently counting down. I started a horror podcast, I started a Star Wars podcast, and of course, this is where all future entertainment videos will go. Star Wars, whatever, horror movies, whatever, trailer reactions will all come to this new channel. Several of you have, or about 20 of you have already come over and subscribed. And this is where the Friday the 13th series will get uploaded from now on. I'll probably move all the podcast over here. I will probably move those over here. I guess I will. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. I don't know how I'm going to transfer. I would hate to move my biggest video, my biggest Star Wars video. I would almost hate to move it off the original channel because it's probably got 14,000 views on it or something now. But I might do that anyway. I don't know. If you're new to the channel, hit subscribe. This is number 6 in the Friday the 13th countdown. My next Star Wars one will be coming... I don't know. I've got a couple of Star Wars videos coming. I've got a regular Star Wars video coming because I want to talk about Doomcock. Or Doomcock's rumor, not Doomcock himself. I'm a big Doomcock fan. But I want to talk about the George Lucas thing. Because that's interesting. That's interesting right now. And you're probably like, whoa, Rhodes, you're lighting up. Yeah. Because right now, I'm not monetized. These are informal videos. And not only that, right now it is actually 9:24. I had already started this when my dog decided at 9 o'clock at night he needed to go potty. For the first time, maybe ever, this late. And I was like, you waited until I was 13 minutes into my podcast to decide you needed to go potty out of nowhere. We know I've got rescue animals. This channel is not monetized. The other one is. So, this is the original home of Road Rants. Road Rants on Star Wars started on this channel, which originally was called On the Roads Again. And it was an eBay channel. Now, I still do some eBay sales. I just quit making videos on eBay. I quit sourcing for eBay. And mainly because, well, there's just a lot of things that's went on in my life since then. A lot of the videos had Debbie in it, right? And I left the animal videos on there, so if you want to see the rescues, go see them. I need to go back and watch a couple of them because little bear's in them. And so's Lucy. So, God, that just made me sad. You know, goddamn, this year has been nuts. Now, on to the countdown, number 6. This is where the cream rises to the top. The last movie was part 7, which happened to be number 7. I gave it a 6.75. These movies get better starting right here. I will tell you what I feel about the first 4 Friday the 13th movies, including the original, is they were still true horror movies back then. They had an element of terror and an element of creepiness to them. And they felt like horror movies. They did. And whereas the later on movies started taking on more of a popcorn feel and just a fun, let's see how Jason murders somebody next. While there's a lot of creative kills in these movies, at no point, and this is the difference, at no point in the first 4 or in part 6, at no point did I root for Jason. I was actually rooting for the good guys to win, to escape. Right? So, Friday the 13th, part 3D. This was in 3D. Came out in 1982. And it was directed by a really good horror director by the name of Steve Miner. In the horror community, he's sort of a legend. He directed Friday the 13th Part 2, Part 3. He directed Warlock. He directed the latest version of Day of the Dead. And he directed a movie I'm pretty high on, which is Halloween H2O. Which, in my opinion, was a better version of Jamie Lee Curtis coming back. It just felt more realistic for her to be an alcoholic, a borderline drug addict, struggling PTSD with her fight with Michael. It kept Halloween 2 canon, and it had a really good ancillary cast, and it felt like a really high quality movie. But that's for a different video for a different day. But he directed that film, and he directed a good little horror movie from the 80s called House. And he directed episodes of Smallville, one of my favorite TV shows of all time about Clark Kent, the future Superman, also known as Kal-El, right? So Steve Miner really has I've got a sort of a soft spot in my heart for Steve Miner as a director. He was an associate producer on Friday the 13th, the original, with Sean Cunningham. And Part 2 and Part 3 have something in common. They've got very good women actresses for the surviving final battle with Jason. And in my opinion, both of the movies have 2 of my top 3 females ever in Friday the 13th. This one was a character named Chris, played by a young lady at the time. She's 61 years old now, that lives not too far from me, about 2 hours away, or is from there, Texarkana. And Dana Kimmel. And Dana Kimmel was really a television actress. And when you see her in Friday the 13th Part 3, you immediately realize you've seen her on TV in episodic television that was so big back in the 80s. But me being a big Chuck Norris fan, she was in my favorite Chuck Norris movie of all time, Lone Wolf McQuade, where Chuck Norris fought David Carradine. I love that movie. He plays a rough-ass, rotten bastard Texas Ranger. If Walker Texas Ranger had real teeth, that would be Lone Wolf McQuade. Well, she played McQuade's daughter in that movie. So, and I had seen that movie before I saw this movie. Lone Wolf McQuade was big in the Rhodes house growing up. Now, this movie was, as part of a marketing thing, it was brought up, let's make this movie in 3D. They felt they had the technology for it, and this movie sort of, they were looking at various movies that could be in 3D. At the time, Star Trek was in play to be 3D, possibly. And they said, well, what other properties do we got? And somebody said, well, what about Friday the 13th? And somebody said, that's interesting. And so they made this movie in 3D. And when I bought the deluxe edition, it came with some badass little 3D glasses that had some like hockey mask imagery on it. Pretty cool. And so not only is that sort of part of this movie's history, but this movie is notable for another big reason. Particularly for one Mr. Voorhees, played by Richard Booker. A stunt man, did a really good job as Jason. Really did. Now, I was not thrilled with Jason's look when he did not have the mask on. I was not thrilled with his look. They made him look very, for lack of a better term, pig-faced. He felt like he was pig-faced to me. And you know, he was supposed to be sort of like a mongoloid, right? But I just didn't like the makeup they did for this movie for Jason. And it's one of the reasons the movie is a little lower down the list. But we're into the flat good category in these movies now. To me, there is a real step up from part 7 to from number 7 to number 6 now. This movie was made on under $3 million. It was a massive hit. $36 million it grossed, which is a ton of money for 1982. It was a massive hit, and I think to this day, except for Freddy vs. Jason and the reboot, I don't want to call it a remake because to me it's not a remake. It's a reboot or re-imaging. And I do think there are differences in those terms. It's not a straight-up remake. And we'll get to that when we get to that movie. And I guarantee you there's Friday fans that are like, it's not lower. The movie's not already come and gone. A lot of people hate that movie. I do not. Anyway, so, this and the final chapter were the two biggest grossing Friday movies for a long, long time. All the way up till 2003 when Freddy vs. Jason dropped and made $85 or $90 million worldwide. This and the final chapter were the gold standards at the box office. Both of them made, I think, over $35 million, and both of them were made for roughly $3 million. You know, easy money for these movies. And they've made so much more money on video, whether it's DVD, box sets, VHS back in the day. I mean, this was right as VHS was... Laserdisc was winding down. We were coming into the launch of VHS. Movies like Jason Lives benefited a ton from VHS. The final chapter benefited a ton from VHS. And I probably still have these movies on VHS if you want to know the truth in my storage building. The ancillary characters, and we've talked about that in the previous podcast, the surrounding characters a lot of times are part of the problem in these movies. And in this movie, the ancillary characters are good. And the actors are actually good. These character actors, these side character actors, are actually interesting. And you find yourself, they're very, very likable. Very likable. She knows, she had vacation. This movie takes place at a part of Crystal Lake where there's really a farm. and the lake, I guess, is a channel of the lake, or a cove of the lake, has this farm off to the side of it. And this farm is there. It's called Higgins Haven. And she had went there as a teenage girl. Now, I don't know how old she's supposed to be, but I get the feeling we're looking at about a 5, maybe 6, 7, 8 year difference, maybe, in what she's, since the last time Chris has been there. Well, she decides to go back out there. And she, I guess, had a boyfriend or a love interest. His name was Rick. And this is Rick's place. I don't know if it was his parents' place at one time, but it's Rick's farm. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4, all 3 of these movies happened in about a 5-day period. 4 or 5 day period. So he went from Baghead Jason to dead in the final chapter, all within 3 or 4 or 5 days. Which is wild. A lot of people don't realize that. They think there's actually a time lapse. And this is, Rian Johnson, this is how non-time lapses work really well. It works really well. This movie starts off after the events of Part 2. Now, Jason, for whatever reason, looks a lot different, okay? And that's one of the things. They changed the makeup from movie to movie. But he looks a lot different in this movie than he did what's supposed to just be like the day before. Because this movie starts out at a general store. And this tells you Jason has not been on this killer rampage, because there is a general store located just off of Crystal Lake that you can tell has been there for years, and this husband and wife couple have been running it. And the movie starts off with the husband and wife at this general store, we'll call it. Convenience store, general store. They used to be called general stores. And again, interesting. The wife, you can't stand her. She's rude to the husband. The husband seems like the nicest guy in the world. He's petting a rabbit on his head. He's carrying a rabbit around. Really, seems like a sweet guy. He's supposed to be watching his heart. You're like, damn, the guy's got heart problems. Again, Steve Miner did a great job. He did a pretty good job in Part 2 with ancillary characters. And I know we haven't gotten to that movie, but I like the ancillary characters actually in this movie better than I do in Part 2, even though I consider Part 2 to be a better movie. I like the ancillary characters here very, very well. Now, there's one particular ancillary character that has kind of went down in Friday the 13th lore in the history, played by an actor by the name of Larry Zerner. Now, the funny thing about Larry Zerner is he has went on to become a Hollywood lawyer in real life. And he is the guy that really and truly is really keeping up with the Friday the 13th lawsuit right now. When I made a video a while back, a lot of that information came from things that Larry Zerner said. He knows all about that lawsuit. So that's weird. One of the actors became, and he's lost a bunch of weight. Shelley was his character's name, and Shelley's famous again in Friday lore. Shelley was a prankster. He was trying to get attention of a girl named Vera. God, there were some pretty brunettes. There were 3 particularly pretty brunettes in this movie. They were pretty. And there's another lady. I want to make sure I get her name right because she deserves a little. Tracy Savage, and she plays Debbie. So you had Chris, you had Vera, and Vera's played by Catherine Parks. Okay, yeah, she's been in other things. And they're all three really pretty women, brunettes. And that's sort of the one thing about this movie is you're like, wow, there were three pretty brunettes. And because there wasn't a bunch of camp counselors, and it was started to get more condensed into the formula we was used to seeing later, 7 ancillary characters. I'm just throwing a number out, but 7. And Shelley was a prankster. He was trying to get Vera's attention. Shelley wasn't very good looking. Larry Zerner, you aged better than you were when you were younger, sir. And Vera wasn't having it. So Shelley would kind of play these pranks on her, trying to get her attention. Well, he played a prank on her, and he played a couple of different pranks on everybody. He played a real bad one on Chris and upset her. And we find out that Chris had some traumatic shit happen out at this farm when they were out there. And that's why she hadn't been out there in years. Well, he played one of those tricks. Everybody was mad at him. He was like, I need to go into town. And Vera says, well, I'll go with you. They go into town. They run into some bikers. They have an altercation in a store with some bikers. They come out of there. Shelley's pissed. Shelley is driving Rick's Volkswagen Bug. He gets mad. He runs these bikers' bikes over. Well, later on, the bikers are mad. They show up out at Higgins Haven, the farm. They siphon the gas out of Chris's van. This would be important later. Very important. And they're going to burn down the barn. Well, anyway, Jason has come through. He went through the general store. The lady is watching a newscast, and it's showing Jenny from part 2 getting loaded into the ambulance. So that tells you right there, that morning, is the morning after part 2, and now we're at nighttime in part 3, the next day. And Jason is lurking about the general store outside. And it's very creepy. Some very creepy images. There's some great images around some clothing that's hanging outside on clotheslines. And some great shots. Steve Miner did a great job of keeping Jason's face and part of the top half of him out of view for a big portion of this movie. And it made it more sinister, and it made it more impactful when we finally see Jason from torso up, or from mid-torso up. Well, he dispatches the couple at the general store. And there's an old man laying in the road when Chris in the van comes through. And Jason's giving him an eyeball. So weird how Jason, at times, won't kill somebody. He said, I was given this eyeball with a warning, do not go where you're going. Now, ironically enough, when Chris was picking up Vera from her house, Vera's mother did not want her to go to Crystal Lake. Remember, it's got a death curse. The townspeople think there's something wrong with Crystal Lake. Now, again, this is some channel at Crystal Lake. Higgins Haven is, I guess, off the beaten path of the lake. And maybe Jason just didn't make it around there much. Because this Higgins Haven was not very far from that general store. So, we get out there. The kids unload. Shelley plays a couple of really piss-ass pranks. They go into town. The biker thing happens like we talked about, and then we get back. Now, this is Rick's place, and her friends are getting on his nerves. And he's like, I got to go for a drive. And she says, well, Chris says, I want to go with you. So they go for a drive, and they're sitting around out in the woods talking. Creepy as frick. But you got to remember, because all this happens within a few days, they don't know that there's a killer out there. This is not like Part 6, where they know who Jason Voorhees is. These people don't know who Jason is. They don't. Even though there was a legend in Part 2 and the camp counselors talked about it, they thought it was just that, a legend, and these people certainly don't know. They wasn't involved with the camp or anything like that. Well, we find out that Chris had an altercation as a younger person with Jason. She had gotten into a fight with her parents, and she had ran out in the woods. Said she's going to show them she'll hide. Well, she had fallen asleep in the woods, and she woke up because she heard something. And there was some rustling around, and then there you could tell in the imagery, it was Jason. And Jason chased her and tried to get a hold of her and all this. And evidently he drug her somewhere, and she passed out. Well, now this is the weirdest thing about this. And I never knew this until I saw the second one of the documentaries that came out. But this scene implied, and I didn't know this, that Jason actually molested her, or tried to molest her, or tried to, I guess, have sexual intercourse with Chris. Or he has sexually assaulted her, or tried to. Well, anyway, she woke up and she was back in her parents' bed, or in her own bed, she said. It was left ambiguous, but that was the implication, or what was being implied according to the documentary. And I never knew that. Because we never knew Jason to want to fornicate. But it makes sense. He's been out in the woods. That is a more humanized side. And look, to be very clear, in Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4, Jason is a human. He's not that super zombie. He's not got super strength, even though he is strong as fuck. And there's something else that's... You realize some stuff in this movie, and you realize how big Jason is. Richard Booker must have been a big dude. Ted White was a big guy in Part 4. But you realize how big he is, because the character of Rick was one tall bitch. He was a tall dude. He was a big dude. But when Jason got a hold of him, he looked small. He did. Well, they get back from having been out in the woods. Well, Jason's been at the house, and he's unkilled everybody. But Shelly went out to the barn, and Jason was in the barn. Because when the bikers showed up to burn down the barn, Jason killed them all. Maybe. And Shelly saw the door closing from a distance and was like, he thought one of the other folks he came out there with was in the barn where he went to investigate. Well, Vera was out sitting by the lake, pissed off because Shelly had pulled a prank on her, wearing a hockey mask. Shelly was wearing a hockey mask. She drops her Shelly's wallet into the water, and she wades into the water, and she's picking up the wallet, and Shelly had a harpoon gun, with the arrow on the end. Well, it was a very good scene. Very well played out. She gets in the water. She's wading in the water. She turns around. And she sees a figure walking out on the dock. And you can tell at that moment, Jason is a big sumbitch. But he is wearing the hockey mask for the first time ever. Iconic moment, iconic scene. He had gotten that hockey mask from Shelley. When he killed Shelley, well, Shelley wasn't quite dead, but Shelley might as well been dead. He had his throat cut. He comes walking out onto the dock, and he's got that harpoon in his hand. And it's sort of a creepy scene. And Vera turns and looks, Shelley, I dropped your wallet. And he ain't saying nothing. And she picks it up and she looks up and she said, Shelley? And then she realizes and she says, who are you? And he raises that harpoon up and he shoots her right in the eye. And it is a great shot. It's a great shot. It's a great scene. The way it plays out. And then he just drops the harpoon and turns around and looks up at the house. It is very creepy. It is very well done. And it is the first time in the entire film you see Jason. All of him. He's already killed some folks by then. But it's the first time you see all of him. And there's a couple other people left. He dispatches them. Chris and Rick get back. There's popcorn burning on the stove. There's a couple of doors that's been blocked off by chairs. But one of the best parts about this is there starts a storm blowing in. So the wind starts picking up, and there's shutters that are starting to bang, and they did a great job of the leaves blowing and the trees blowing. And this movie gets really creepy really fast. They did a great job, and the music starts rising up a little bit more, and the music gets a little bit more up tempo. By the way, Harry Manfredini, who created the theme, this movie had a techno disco theme in it. Because disco was big, it was a completely different remix, and that theme from this movie has taken on a life of its own. There's actual bands out there that play this theme in their live shows, for crying out loud. And I did not realize that. The theme from this movie took on a whole life of its own. And in fact, I might just grab that theme and use it in the intro later on. So when I go to upload this, right? That's the small things I love about these podcasts. Well, they come in the house and they're like, "Where's everybody at?" We think they took off, and they were like, "They surely wouldn't leave." And Paul and Rick is like, "I'm going to go outside and see if I can get the lights on." Well, Chris didn't know this. She said, "Well, I'm going to come with you," but he got kind of a head start on her. Well, he had taken a step outside, and Jason had grabbed him. And she stepped out, and she said, Rick. Well, Jason had his hand over Rick's mouth. Rick couldn't say shit. And she shut the door and went inside, and Jason picks him up by his head, squeezes his head, and his freaking eyeball popped out. It's in 3D. It kind of looks a little hokey. And then drops then just drops Rick. But it's a powerful moment in the movie because you realize how big Jason really is. And if Rick can't do anything with Jason, Rick was a dude, a straight up dude. And Jason killed him like it was nothing. We'll get to another one of those deaths later, because there's another death in the series, and I consider it to be the best. I consider it to be the most horrific death in the franchise, and it's the one that made the most impact on me, and I think it is a terrifying death. And we'll get to that when we get to that movie. So Chris is alone now. Everybody's dead. And Jason throws Rick through the window. And you can tell there's blood coming out Rick's ear. I mean, he just crushed Rick's head, basically, with his bare hands. Again, he's a human, but he's still strong as hell. New meaning to country boy strong. And there's always a theory, you know, I don't even know if you're supposed to say mongoloid anymore, but I don't think it's politically correct. Hell, I don't know, and y'all know I'm not concerned about it. But there was always a theory that mongoloids were stronger than everybody else. And that was sort of on display in this movie as Jason. And look, Chris fights back. She does. She pulls a bookcase over she's up on top, he's down below, she's upstairs. She pulls a bookcase over. All the books fall down on Jason. People don't think about big books hitting somebody in the head. Hurts like hell. I've been hit in the head accidentally by a book that's fell off a shelf. Goddamn, I thought I had a fucking concussion. I thought, shit, that damn thing like to knock me out. Put a mark on my head. And you're talking about 10 books hitting Jason. You know, it doesn't sound like a lot, but again, you're talking about somebody that's still human at this point. Well, they get upstairs. She's hiding in a closet. She starts finding dead bodies of friends, and she was trying to be quiet. Well, she made some noise, so now Jason knows where she's at. Body falls out. She has to pull a knife out of her dead friend. Jason's chopping at the door with a freaking axe. Well, he sticks his hand in to try to unlock the door. Boom, she stabs his hand. I mean, it's a good-looking shot. From an effect standpoint, it looks really realistic, like that knife went into his hand. And Jason's like, ow, that freaking hurt. And she comes charging out, just really swiping this knife at Jason, and he's going backwards. And she gets him in the knee. She leaves the knife in him. He falls back, and he reaches down, and he has to pull that knife out of his knee. And he's made noises like, oh, that hurt. Like, there's one part when he gets stabbed in the knee, he's like, oh! I mean, you know, he's human right now. Well, she runs off. She gets out of the window. She gets down to her van. And she gets in the van. She's hauling. She's like, I'm out of here. Now he comes running out of the house, and there's a really long driveway to this place where they actually cross over a wooden bridge. When she gets on top of this little wooden bridge, her van runs out of gas. Now, a little known fact, Chevy had a commercial one time that used Jenny's Volkswagen Bug. She had a Bug too in part 2. And Chris's van, which I think was a Dodge van. And the commercial, it was played in theaters before movies started back in the 90s. And it showed them both trying to crank their cars. And Chevy, it said, "Don't you wish you'd have bought a Chevy?" I mean, it was a great commercial. And I had forgotten about it till I watched this again the other day. And I thought, man, I remember that commercial where they used scenes of part 2 and part 3. And it was a Chevy commercial. Weird ancillary things, you know, that I find cool about these movies. And so she gets on top of the bridge, damn thing runs out of gas. Well, at this point, the wind's really blowing, and she's looking in the rearview mirror, and he's got sort of he runs in this movie. He runs in this movie, he runs in part 4. He ran in part 2. He hadn't gotten that zombie stealth walk going yet. Not a pretty run. And plus, in this one, he's limping because he got stabbed in the knee. You're talking about a stab that would put 99.9% of everybody down for the count. Well, she realizes, you know, that van had a second gas tank. So she realized, she looks down, she's like, shit, I'm out of gas. She reaches over, boom, flips on the second gas tank, getting ready to drive off. The van collapses into the bridge. She gets out. Jason actually reaches in the window with both hands. She rolls the window up on his. She's got him trapped in there for a second. And she scurries out the passenger door. She's running off. And Jason takes his head and slams it through the window to break it to get free. Well, now they're headed into the barn. Headed into the barn. And they get into the barn, and this is the other thing you realize Jason's a badass. One of the bikers was this big black dude. He was a badass motherfucker. You could tell. People didn't fuck with him. He was like badass Leroy Brown. You wasn't fucking with this dude. Well, Jason had actually hit him in the head with a wrench about 4 or 5 times, and you think he's dead. Well, he's not dead. So they get in the barn. Jason's looking for her. Jason's about to get her, and this biker comes out of nowhere. Jason's got a machete in his hand. And Jason turns around, cuts this guy's arm off, and he's looking at it like, ah! And then Jason just hacks the guy up. And again, you're seeing the two actors together, Jason, Richard Booker, and the biker. You can tell the biker's no small dude. Jason just just makes the guy look like he's short and tiny and small. And you realize, God damn, Jason's a big guy. Even as a human. So he turns around, and Chris is picking up. She has picked up the axe that he originally came in there with. She picked it up. Bam! She had gotten upstairs, and it actually hung him. And when she went to walk out, he undid the noose, and he had to raise his mask, and she realizes, oh my God, this is the thing that was after me that night. Because she goes, you. Now, by the way, Dana Kimmel has done a phenomenal job as a frantic, scared to death woman that is trying to fight back. But you can tell it's doing some shit to her. Phenomenal job. Phenomenal acting job from Dana Kimmel here. And by any standard, but from a horror movie perspective, very, very good. That's when she whacks him in the head with the axe. He falls to the ground. You think he's dead. And even at that point, they had considered this might be the last one. Now, she goes out. She gets in a canoe. She goes out into the water. She wakes up the next morning. Very cool stuff. Like some ducks come through and startle Chris, and she like gets nervous. And then she looks up at the house, and Jason is standing in the window. And she starts being frantic, and she's trying to get an oar to start paddling. And he comes running out of the house, and he blows the door off the hinges. And he ain't got his mask on. He's bleeding. He looks pig-faced. I hate the look. And then she looks up, and he's gone. He's gone. What the fuck? And then we have a homage to the first Friday the 13th when Jason comes up out of the water, except this time it's Mama. Mama comes up out of the water, grabs Chris, and pulls her under. But then we figure out Chris was dreaming. And it comes out of it. The sheriff, the police are all out there. And there's a nice line from the cop. He goes, that kid's been through hell. And they bring her out of the house, and I mean, she's kind of laughing. She's kind of got this weird, almost Joker from Batman laugh going, where she has lost mental capacity. She has lost it. And she looks over in the barn. Jason's in the barn, laying exactly where she left him after she put the axe in him. So he hadn't gotten up. That was a dream sequence she had had. They put her in the back of the squad car, and I mean, she's turning around looking at out the back window at him. She actually she goes from frantically crying to like a really hysterical, ha, 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 ha. She starts laughing, so you know she's lost mental capacity. Now, Dana Kimmel says one of the things she gets asked is, what happens to Chris? Because it seems like she went nuts. And she said, well, we consider that Chris recovered eventually. But at the time, it was immediate post-stress. This movie's good. This movie's good. I give it a 7.5 out of 10. Starting to come into real prime Friday the 13th status now. It's good. This is not a pretty good. This is not an okay. We are in good territory. It's a good horror movie. It's a damn good slasher movie. And even though it's way down at 6, you know, I can see how some people, this might be their favorite. I can see that. As a kid, this movie scared the shit out of me. It scared the shit out of me. It did. Jason scared the shit out of me in this movie. Steve Miner did a bad-ass job on this movie. I obviously think he did a better job with part 2 because we haven't gotten to part 2 yet. So, that's it. Friday the 13th part 3 is number 6 on my list. If you're new to the channel, hit subscribe. This is a video podcast series. We started one of my Patreons, Kyle. I've got a Patreon, patreon.com/Rhodes Rants. This channel is not monetized. My other channel is monetized. This video would have actually made money on my other channel. The problem is this video would have also gotten 45 views on my other channel. Whereas this is why I made the change. I uploaded a political video earlier. Last I checked, it had 280 views on it. Pretty good performing video for only being up 3.5 hours. But I had gotten 11 subs off that 280 view video. That's just unheard of. You won't get that on pop culture content. You won't. Unless you're in the beginning stages of something like The Last Jedi happening, or The Last of Us 2, you won't get that frantic subscribing viewer on YouTube. But with political content, especially in the climate we're in right now, it's why I made the change. Politics is growing. The regular Rhodes Ranch channel that just says Rhodes Ranch now, it is literally outgrowing pop culture content 3 to 4 to 5 to 1 at times on a subscription level. Like, for example, the Rhodes Ranch channel was forecasted to have had roughly around 2,000 subs by the end of the year. When in the matter of the last 6 weeks, it's now forecasted to have 3,000 subs. So it's added a full 1,000 subs on to my channel, to the regular Rhodes Ranch channel by the end of the year. But I was starting to rub some people the wrong way with some of those videos, and I was having subs start asking me, or have you given up on that other content? And I was hurting the channel. The last 30 days I went through, I did an audit, and this was the difference in viewership. I had uploaded 30 pop culture videos over that 30-day period, basically. Star Wars, horror, whatever. Those videos averaged 129 views each. The political videos I had uploaded had averaged 351 views each. That is a big difference for a small channel when it comes to growth, and you're talking about 200 more views a video. I essentially had cost my channel about 6,000 more views. And if I'm being realistic, I cost my channel probably 30 more new subscribers over that 30-day period. At least. Maybe 50, maybe 70, maybe 100. But that doesn't mean this channel will not get equal priority. I want to make these videos. I enjoy doing them. That's where my original interest is movies. But now we've got to grow this channel. It's got at the time of making this video, 217 subs. Most of it is people that's come over. It's gotten 23 new subs in a day that's come over from the other channel. But that tells you my sub amount didn't really drop off. I think I could tell I lost 2 subs off the other channel. I've gained 13 back, so I made up those 2, added 11 on top of it just today. So I always like to talk about the channel a little bit at the end. Both channels in this case. Star Wars videos will continue to come. My gut feeling is probably Star Wars videos every other day, but if there's breaking news, I'll do a video on it. Horror videos, probably one every other day. That's kind of what I want to do. I want to keep it to a video a day on this channel, generally. Something extraordinary happens, a great trailer comes out, breaking news. This channel may get 2 videos in a day. And the other channel, I want to try to do 2 to 3 videos a day over there. Tell me what you think. Rhodes Squadron. Rhodes Rants on Pop Culture. This is the first video podcast uploaded to that channel, this channel. And I'm going to keep rocking them out. I love doing these podcasts. I love them. And there will, of course, be shorter videos. I want to talk about the George Lucas thing. I want to talk about the Lando series. Those will be shorter videos. You know, they'll be a regular 5 to 7 minute video, you know. So, Peace. I am out. Try to guess what the next one is. Till next time.
King Kong in the trunk. King Kong, King Kong, King Kong.